What's up, my people? We are going to be talking about parallel and perpendicular lines in this video. Those two topics really aren't that difficult. So let's jump right in so we can get through this video. Here we go. So to the left, you see that we have parallel lines and you see perpendicular lines. And if you notice that parallel lines, something's interesting about those, and then perpendicular, they do exactly the opposite. So let's talk about what that is. So parallel lines have the same slope. And parallel lines will never intersect. So they have the same slope and they will never intersect because they have the same slope. So for example, if my slope is 1/2, any line that has a slope of 1/2 will be parallel to this line, okay? So that's parallel lines. And then perpendicular lines, in order to be perpendicular, two things has to happen. Number one, they have to have the opposite sign. On the slope, and they also have to have their reciprocal. So let's see what that means. So opposite sign means if the slope was positive, now it's negative. And if it's reciprocal, let's talk about that. So let's say my initial slope, so let's say original slope was a positive 2/3. The slope that's perpendicular will be opposite sign. So since this sign over here is positive, the slope of my perpendicular line will be negative. And reciprocal just simply means flip the fraction. So if my initial fraction was 2/3, my new fraction is going to be 3/2. This is a sign for perpendicular. By the way, it is good to note that the symbols, so oftentimes I won't write the words perpendicular and parallel. I'll use symbols. So let's go back up here to parallel. The symbols for parallel, let's use a highlighter, is just two lines straight up and down like that. That is the symbol for parallel. Okay? Parallel lines have no intersection. That's actually no intersection. And perpendicular lines, that symbol is this one. And that's a symbol because it makes a 90-degree angle, okay? So we have to have the opposite sign and the reciprocal. So let's do a quick check. If this were my slope, let's say this were my slope, 1/5. What would be the slope of the line that's parallel? And what's the slope of the line that's perpendicular? Let's see. So because it's parallel means the same slope. That's easy, 1/5. Now perpendicular, I have to change the sign. So since it started out positive, sign's gonna be negative. And instead of being 1/5, it's now 5/1. Or you can just put just 5. -5. Okay? So let's get into some equations where we actually have to utilize parallel and perpendicular. So now we get into the equation where it says write the slope-intercept form of the equation of the line, but now it has to be parallel to this and go through that point. So we're back to this formula. Y minus y1 equals m parenthesis x minus x1. So let's go ahead and start with that. Y minus something equals something parenthesis x minus something. So this part never changes. X1, Y1. But they didn't give us the slope. So we know what our X1 is. Our X1 is going to go back here. That's going to be 3. Our Y1 is going to go here. That's going to be 2. But we need to identify the slope that is parallel to first thing we got to do is identify the slope in the original equation, which is here, 7/3. And so because we know the slope is going to be parallel, it's the same slope. 7/3 goes here. Okay. Hopefully you got that down. So I'm going to erase this because I'm going to need it. And if I erase it too fast, rewind the video. All right. So now we just got to find the equation. So this becomes 7/3 x. 7 times 3 is 21. Divided by 3 is 7. And then like we did in class, we're just going to add 2 to both sides. This is the equation that is parallel, same slope, parallel to that first equation. Okay, now let's do the second one. Has to go through this point, but has to be parallel to y equals negative 5x minus 1. So again, I got to start with point slope. It has to go through. So this is my x1, y1. So my x1 is over here is negative 1. My y1 is 0. And because it's parallel, that means this slope is still the same. Okay, so this ends up becoming negative 5x. Double signs. So negative 5 times a positive 1 is negative 5. And then y minus 0 equals just y. And what a coincidence. This one was easy for us. Okay. Now this next one. X equals 0. It has to be parallel to x equals 0. But it goes through 5, negative 2. So let's see what that looks like in a picture. So first off, let me go ahead and graph what x equals 0 is. Remember, x equals is a Vux line, which means that it's a vertical line. So it's a vertical line on right here. That's the x equals 0 graph. Now I need to draw a line or write an equation of a line that's parallel to that, but it goes through 5, negative 2. Which means that my graph would need to do this. What's the equation of that line? X equals 5. So if it's parallel to x equals something, it's just that x number. On these, you might want to draw those out, okay? All right. Next one. Now let's transition into perpendicular. Perpendicular means, remember, we're going to make a little note. Opposite sign. Reciprocal. So we're going to do the reciprocal of the fraction. So again, we got y minus y1 equals something, parenthesis, x minus something else. This doesn't change, x1, y1. So the y1 is going to go here, x1 is going to go there. But it needs to be perpendicular to this. So if I start with a positive 1/6, perpendicular, okay, this is positive. So my perpendicular will be negative, and then it'll have to be 6/1. We have to flip that. So this ends up being -6. And this changes to a plus, because, those double signs, no good. All right, -6 times x, -6x. -6 times +1, -6. And then one final step, because we want to isolate the y, I'm going to add 4. Y equals -6x. -6 plus 4 is a -2. Okay, let's do another one. We're almost done with these. You notice every time I start with the same one, anytime they want me to write an equation, we use point slope because we have a point and we pretty much know the slope. So remember, this is still x1, y1. So my x1 is going to go back here 4. Y1 is going to go here 1. But I need to find something that's perpendicular to -2. Okay? First things first, opposite sign. So I got to switch the sign to a positive. And because this is -2/1, technically, when I flip the fraction, it's going to become +1/2. Okay, now we go ahead and distribute 1/2 x. 1/2 times 4, well, 1 times 4 is 4. Divided by 2 is 2. And then we're going to add 1 to both sides. And then -2 plus 1 is a -1. Okay, so that is the equation of the line that is perpendicular to the initial line, but it happens to go through 4, 1. Okay, now finally, we have to write the equation that goes through 5, -4, but perpendicular to x equals 0. So let's go ahead and look at the x equals 0 graph again. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So x equals 0 was this one. Straight up and down. But now we need it to go through 5, -4. But instead of being parallel, we need it to be perpendicular. So because of that, we need it to do this. We got to figure out what the equation of that pink line is. And considering that it is a horizontal line, that should trigger us to say poi, which is a y equals equation. Y equals what? -4. Okay. That is going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, go ahead and see me in class, and you have a good one.